Good evening, and I welcome you to your transformative program, Politics. As always, we bring you the news, not just the news that is in the system, but we bring you the factual news so that it will help you make the right decisions. Your host is still Emmanuel Wilson Jr., and this evening we're going to have a conversation around something that has been bothering all of us, and it has to do with the energy sector. Whether or not Doomsaw is back, and if it is back, what exactly are we doing about it? I have said always that one of the sectors that has no issue when it comes to, or shouldn't have issue when it comes to finances, has to do with the electricity. Because all of us go to pay before services are rendered to us, what we call the prepaid. Unfortunately, after paying, we struggle to get the energy or the electricity. Today, we are crying for a common timetable, and yet we have a leader in the name of Napo or Matthew Prempe Opoku, who is our minister, with impunity telling us to bring our own timetable. That's the least he can tell us. When he's supposed to solve the Doomsaw issue, he comes rather to tell us when we are complaining. He tells us that we should come with our own timetable. This is someone we are paying with our taxes, and this is the best he can do when we find ourselves in this crisis. We are not going to take much of the time because this evening's episode has a very important guest. And this is a guest who is going to help us, understand the whole issue and to also let us know the way forward. I'm going to take a commercial break, and when we come back, I'll introduce to you my guest for this evening's
Welcome to AutoCheck Vehicle Diagnostic and Licensing Center.
I hear my car can be checked here without going to Accra.
Sure.
Emission, check.
Alignment, check.
Brakes, check.
Visit AutoChecks at Koforodia Aquadrum Road for the roadworthiness of your vehicle, from saloon cars to heavy-duty industrial vehicles. Madam, your car is now ready for the road.
Thank you so much. Auto checks, check.
AutoChecks, your safety, our priority.
Auto checks.
The average human body mass should have at least 60% water for optimal performance in any physical or mental exercise. We can help you maintain it naturally. X Natural Mineral Water. Simply natural. For bulk purchase, call 0596 273 546 or 0596 273 547. This advert is FDA approved.
Welcome back. As I indicated, this evening's episode is an episode that you can't miss for anything. And I will encourage you to alert your colleagues and friends, family, loved ones to also tune in. Let them get interactive with us on our social media platforms, and let them also get interactive with us, particularly using our WhatsApp number as it is on the screen. And we'll debate and discuss your comments. We are very privileged to have with us one man I have admired from afar. And one reason for my admiration for him is the level of principle that he has exhibited over the past period. This man is a guru when it comes to the energy sector. This man was our former power minister. And I remember very well, before he taking that position, he told everyone that we should give him till a particular period, and if he's not able to resolve the doomsaw that we were having then, he will resign. And I felt this is the kind of leaders we need. If you are not able to perform, you should be willing to say that I'm resigning. Interestingly, he did perform. And it was very clear on the 15th of December 2015. We all realized and we saw the end of doomsaw. That was a principled man. This man I'm talking about is also the founder, and most people do not know, but he also the first CEO of BOST and the Petroleum Commission of Ghana. He founded it. He ensured that it was operating. He is the one who started it as the chief executive officer. I'm talking about no other person than your own, my own, our own member of parliament for Peru. I think it's Peru East, Honorable Dr. Obna Donko. Doc, welcome to Politics and Beyond.
Thank you.
And I'm so happy. I mean, our guests are so privileged to have you with us because we are really struggling. We are going through a lot when it comes to indeed. Before this encounter, when the flyer went out, individuals started having conversation on our platform and we're talking about the frustration. And I'm sure all of us are going. The first question that we will need from you to answer is Ghana's energy sector, what exactly is happening?
Well, Ghana's energy sector is struggling. We are struggling structurally, we are struggling financially, and we are struggling managerially. And we've also had an episode of short-term mentality in a sector that needs medium to long-term planning. And so there's been a mismatch.
Very well. Well, that I was actually trying to put that notes. You see, you've mentioned four key things. First one is the structural. Second one is the financial. Third one is managerial. Just about 2 or 3 days ago, there were comments that came from a number of, the actors in the field. Gridco, saying that the issue has to do with money, finance. Others also come and say that, well, it is not about finance, it's just shortages of gas that we have in the system. Today, you are making reference to 3 of them, structural, financial, and managerial. Will you be kind enough to let us know, appreciate what you mean when you mention the structural, managerial, and financial?
Our energy sector is a sector in transition. Remember, and here let me limit myself in the short term to the power sector because energy is made up of power and petroleum. And let me restrict myself to the power sector since that is the focus today. We have a structural disability in that until very recent years, we've always seen power as a social good and not as an economic good. This has its historical origins in the Akosombo Dam. When the Akosombo Dam was constructed, the dam generated so much power, and hydro is one of the cheapest form of generation globally. And so, and because of the offtake agreement with Kaiser, which later became Valco, there was a revenue flow to service the facility we took for constructing the dam and to keep VRA afloat. So for consumers, especially non-industrial consumers, it was just an added on. And so our tariffs were very low. And so we got very used to cheap electricity. And that affected our attitudes. So we are generally very wasteful when it comes to power because we're brought up on cheap power. Unfortunately, come the 90s, we realized that hydro alone, even with the addition of the Pond Dam under General Kutua Champong, wasn't enough. And so we had to look for other form of generation. Meanwhile, we had exhausted all our major sources of hydro. And so we had to look at thermal complementation, thermal generation. Thermal power is at the minimum 2.5 to 3 times more expensive than hydro, especially legacy hydro. But in the early years, thermal still made up a small percentage in our generation mix. And therefore, the average price was still low. Last year, thermal, if you add Akosombo, Bui, and Pong, contributed less than 40% of our generation mix. The rest was thermal. And so, in the mix, thermal dominates, and so it has a higher price. And so the average price for electricity has gone up. So that is the structural side. And then, of course, we took the position of having a generating subsector, a transmission subsector, and a distribution subsector. The weakest link is the distribution subsector, where we have two dominant state players. ECG accounts for about 80% of the power usage, but covers 46% of the land mass. NETCO covers 64% of the land mass, but less than 20% of the power usage. These two distributing companies largely are run as public services, not as commercial entities. And therefore, the focus has never been on efficiency, it's never been on profitability, it's never been on modern corporate management. The two entities in 2022, their combined loss was in excess of 2 billion cedis. That's the two distributions.
Ghana cedis.
Yes, just the two. And over time, they've been hemorrhaging. They've been losing revenue over time. And so, since the distribution leg is at the last stage of the value chain, and they are losing money, it means there isn't enough money going back to transmission and to generation. So it creates a liquidity and a financial viability challenge. A business can lose money for a while, but it will impact on your financial sustainability. So that leads us to the major financial challenge of the energy sector. The power sector owes close to $3 billion. If you take how much we owe for gas, how much we owe IPPs, and other indebtedness, we are
$3 billion.
Yes. IPPs alone, we owe them close to $1.5 billion and growing. It is not just that we owe, but the debt is growing.
It's growing.
Why do I say the debt is growing? Currently, ECG pays the IPPs $43 million a month for generation. That is the agreement, the restructured agreement the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Energy, ECG, they have gotten into with the IPPs. The $43 million they pay monthly does not cover the whole invoice. And they have agreed that the balance, the remainder on the invoice should be rescheduled to 4 years, should be pushed forward. So the next government is not just going to inherit the legacy $1.5 billion debt, but that will include monthly additions to the debt stock. And that is so important. Then we also owe for gas, natural gas. Indeed, the government of Ghana had to guarantee ENI. And the World Bank had to issue a standby credit. The credit has been drawn down. And we need to repopulate that account, that standby facility. We need to repopulate that. Then again, there is an indebtedness of about $600 million between GMPC, Ghana Gas, VRA, and the IPP for gas. That is not the end of the challenge. The challenge is that right now, the government of Ghana, through the Controller and Accountant General, pays between 200 to 250 million cedis every month to support fuel purchase. So the complexity of the financial challenge is not a child's play. And the next government will inherit this. So but this is made worse by the mismanagement of the macro economy, particularly monetary policy. Today we have the CD hitting an all-time low against the dollar, 14 cedis to the dollar. It has significant impact on the energy sector, both power and petroleum. On the power sector, the payables of the power sector, the payables are dollar denominated. We pay IPPs in dollars, we buy fuel in dollars, we buy parts and equipment in dollars. Yet our receivables are CD denominated. And so when we so manage the macroeconomy to create a situation that we have of the depreciation of the CD, which in itself is the result of monetary failure, monetary policy failure, then we are really in the woods. And that is where we find ourselves. So rather than looking at a quick fix, see, even if we take the $200 million CDs that the Ministry of Finance through Controller pays every month, the 200 million is money that is not going to education. It's money that is not going to health. It's money that is not going to roads. The opportunity cost. And this is every month. And yet this is insufficient. We are still accumulating. So we have, as a people, we need to take stock. What is it we are not doing right?
Right. Doc, sorry. Before we come to what is it that we are not doing right, and I'm very much interested in that. Let's dwell a little on the financial state of it, because it's alarming, the figures you are mentioning and all that. The first question that comes into my mind is, how did we get to this stage? Is it over a period? Because listening to you, you suggested that to a large extent we are not paying realistic tariffs or prices for the fuel or for the energy. If that is it, then what is it? I mean, how long has it been? How did we get here?
That is not the whole story. That is only a contributory.
Exactly.
Fact. The deterioration of the CD has also been major. And let's be fair, we faced these challenges when we were last in government. it was out of this challenge that we realized that, look, there's this legacy debt. So let you and I contribute through taxation to pay off the legacy debt so that going forward, we'll do our best to recover costs at the minimum so that we will not add on to the legacy. And that was why the NDC government, even though we started in 2015, we passed the Energy Sector Levy Act in 2016. Unfortunately, the MPP government, under the economic stewardship of Ken Ofori-Atta, went ahead, collateralized the inflows for immediate consumption.
Mismanaged.
And therefore, wrong choices. And therefore, the legacy debt that we're supposed to be clearing has also been accumulating. So there is that sector, or there is that fact. Now going forward, until we have a stable CD, it becomes extremely difficult to have a stable power sector. Why do we have this price challenge? Let's use ECG, the bigger of the two companies in terms of revenue. ECG loses 30%, around 30% of the power they purchase. And therefore, if they purchase 100 cedis worth of power from IPP, by the time they are able to account for the money for the purchase, they've lost 30 cedis. Very few businesses in this world will have a markup of 30% to even break even before operating expenses. So our distribution and losses made up of commercial and technical is something that we have to tackle. Irrespective of who is in government, we have to tackle that challenge. The government of President Mahama, indeed, it started from President Atta Mills, when President Mahama was the chairman of the economic management team. The economic management team then recommended that the next compact should focus on the power sector. So our compact with the American Millennium Challenge Corporation focused on the power sector. Because the weakest link, as I stated earlier, is at the distribution end. And ECG is the weakest single entity. So the compact was that we needed to introduce some private sector managerial ethos into the distribution sector. I had the privilege of going to cabinet as Minister of Power with two proposals. We had the option of privatizing ECG or going for the concession model. My recommendation in the memo to cabinet was to go for the concession model. His Excellency President Mahama bought into it, and we opted for the concession model, where we will allow the private sector to come and do what they know how to do best, billing, collection, etc. But we will continue to own the assets, the substations, the distribution lines, primary stations. The entity ECG will still be owned 100% by the people of Ghana. The privatization option was to sell shares, equity in ECG, so that it's no longer state-owned. But we opted for the concession. And what did we do? Working with the Millennium Challenge Corporation, working with through MEDA, and there was some World Bank involved. We said, okay, companies interested in partaking in that sector, we set up some benchmark that a foreign company could take 80% equity in the concession, but they must have a Ghanaian partner. So the Ghanaian partner could take around 20%. The intention is for the Ghanaian company to also learn, so that when the concession period ends and we are tendering again, the Ghanaian company may
have the capacity,
if they so want to do that. The Millennium Challenge Corporation was to inject about around 500 million into the ECG distribution network. The company that would have been chosen was also to bring about another 500 million. So we're going to inject about 1 billion into ECG. We had gone through the processes. Unfortunately, the people of Ghana showed us the red card and we lost the election. MPP comes, and one of the weaknesses of our political transitions is that we don't really consult to appreciate the rationale, the reasoning behind some decisions. MPP comes and they say, no, Ghanaians must have majority interest. So they changed the terms to 51 for Ghanaians and 49 for foreigners. Of course, all the big boys who had shown interest walked. You see, what 51% means in corporate governance is that you don't have boardroom control.
That's right.
The reputational risk to the big boys in a business that you don't have boardroom control. And you are still expected to finance your inflow. They will work. And that was how PDS came about. And this was a contraption, a construction that couldn't even meet the basic demand of providing a bank guarantee. The Minister of Finance had to water that down to an insurance guarantee. The two are not the same. So how do we expect PDS and their partners, with PDS in the saddle, to bring in the investment of $500 million that they're about needed? The Millennium Challenge Corporation was not too happy. Of course, the PDS story is there for all to know. Again, PDS was greed-driven, driven by greed. And it was the same greed that led to the dissolution of PDS. So we missed that boat, that opportunity. And yet, let me be fair to PDS. For the short period they were in charge, ECG revenues doubled. Which means the private sector approach is workable. And that is probably the route we should go. The NDC, I happen to chair the power subcommittee of the energy committee. We are looking at the last mile. If the people of Ghana give us power, we'll introduce the private sector in the last mile. Because we need to boost ECG collection. Look, when PDS was in charge, if you had a fault and you reported, the response was very quick. Because if there is a fault and it's not rectified, they are losing revenue. So we will have to tackle that end. So ECG, unfortunately, not just with ECG, because I'm also the ranking member on state enterprises, a number of decisions in the public space, a number of them are procurement driven. It's the most unfortunate single activity in decision making in Ghana. In the private sector, you will have to make a business case. In the public sector, our decisions, too many decisions, I won't say all, too many decisions are procurement driven. So that is the challenge. And that is why we will need to bring in the private sector. First of all, we don't have the capital. ECG is undercapitalized. NETCO is seriously undercapitalized. The Ghanaian state is broke. So where do we get the money? We have to look at the private sector. The private sector injecting capital money into it. Because, yeah, there are the commercial losses of ECG. But the technical losses, you can resolve them by injection of equipment. You have a 60-year-old transformer. You have obsolete and outdated equipment. In these days of technology, we can use IT or even AI, artificial intelligence, to resolve some of the issues of accounting, of energy accounting. If there is a smart transformer, the transformer can be self-accounting. You know the power that has gone into this particular area. You can match that with the revenue coming from that area. If there's a mismatch, you know there's a leakage, you can follow up.
Interesting. Doc, before we take a commercial break again, I recall very well in the month of April 2020, you predicted that if certain measures are not put in place, we'll find ourselves where we are. And clearly your prediction has come to play. I mean, if it is in the spiritual realm, we'll say that you are a prophet. I mean, it has just happened. You were the man who encountered a similar situation. And you were able, despite the structural, financial, managerial crisis, I'm sure it was also there, but you were able to resolve the doomsday. What did you see for which you made that prediction? Which, I mean, at time we've got into that.
Well, if you've been in the industry, demand for power grows between 8.1 and 12% per annum. There is still suppressed demand. And this 8.1, for example, for 2022 was minus Valco. If Valco was operating even 2 more port lines, it would even have been higher. And we were not adding to our generation capacity. To be fair to the current Minister for Power, he is the only high official of the NPP government who said we needed additional generation. Because the party had been held captive to their propaganda of excess capacity. So it became extremely difficult in the regime of excess capacity to be added. Yes, generation.
Yeah.
And it was a very short-sighted propagandist approach. You see, the Energy Commission of Ghana has determined that assuming your peak demand is 3,000. The Energy Commission says you are going to need 18% reserve margin because you are dealing with equipment. That will go down for planned maintenance. There will be unplanned shutdowns, etc. So you need 18% reserve margin. That is just to keep the status quo. It is not to take account of growing demand. So even if we have the conservative of 8% growth per annum, compounded over 6 years, you are going into a shortfall. Then, of course, there is what I call development margin. As we speak, His Excellency the President tours the world looking for investors to come investing. Somebody wants to establish a steel plant. All he needs is 50 megawatts, 100 megawatts. Are you going to ask the person to wait? And it takes, after financial close, it takes 3 years after your FID, final investment decision, to construct a thermal plant, an average of 3 years after FID. Are you going to ask the person to wait for 3 years? In 3 years, you will have energy for that person. No. And therefore, we are also going to need a certain margin, apart from the reserve margin. The reserve margin is just to operate at current levels. That is just keeping the status quo going. Right. We are also going to need another margin available, that an investor comes today, you can have the power. What we have not done as a nation is to determine how this development margin, how it's going to be financed, who pays for it. I sincerely believe it should be an item in the national budget. Because ultimately, as more investments come in, tax revenue increases, employment increases. So the state gets back. And that was what we did under President Mahama. Unfortunately, this was misinterpreted as excess capacity. And so we've fallen into this trap. So I saw this coming because we're not adding on to, and demand was growing. Indeed, if you look at our homes, 20 years ago, there were very few houses with air conditioning in Ghana. In fact, the whole big bungalow sitting on 1 acre in cantonment may have 3 rooms and the outhouse. Maybe the master bedroom will have 1 air conditioner, unit air conditioner. That's about it. Today, on the same 1 acre, you can have 20 apartments, each with either central air conditioning or serious air conditioning. So that alone will increase demand for power, especially at peak period when everybody's home. So that, if you read that, if you understand that, it's not rocket science. We're going to pay the snag that we have hit. So our own propaganda of excess capacity did not help us. And probably for NDC, we probably did not also explain ourselves well enough. And I take responsibility, I take the blame. Probably we didn't explain well enough. And of course, when people are fed up with you, they also don't even want to listen.
They won't listen to you. That is really true. We are going to take a commercial break. I mean, as I indicated, you have no option than to stay tuned to your transformative program because this is where the facts are discussed. Just stay tuned. We'll be right back after this short commercial.
Ifa kura na menye sika. Edia ye mefui.
Ehin fa pa na menya bosia. Ediatre mejuma yimu.
Guy cry my bread. Me yebusia ato taxi fufu. Suhum Rural Bank.
Suhum Rural Bank.
Yɛma akwa ababa Suhum Rural Bank. Yɛwɔ nhyehyɛeɛ ahodoɔ bi te sɛ dwadifoɔ bosia, akuokuo bosia, susu account, anidasoɔ wɔ hɔ savings account, mebada chain savings account, ɛne deɛ ɛkeka ho. Frɛ Suhum Rural Bank wɔ 034229186. Na wɔn nso wɔtumi aka sɛ
Suhum Rural Bank. Ama ene mayeka una.
Suhum Rural Bank. Intime pa minie.
Me damwase.
Suhum Rural Bank, growing our heritage.
Welcome to the Royal Dazzle Event Center. With a lush and well-maintained lawn and garden, you are assured of the best serene and comfortable atmosphere to organize all your family and social events. Live the royal moments here with friends and family. The hosting capacity of 600 to 800 people makes Royal Dazzle the most versatile of places to host weddings, parties, funerals, conferences, concerts, and many more. Create your memories with us. Call us for inquiries on 055-814-8585 or 024-620-2144, or pass by and speak to any of our friendly staff. Locate us at My John, close to Zoom Lion headquarters. Royal Dazzle Event Center, creating memories.
Welcome back to your transformative program, Politics and Beyond. I'm still your host, Emmanuel, and I'm here with our own Honorable Dr. Abna Donko. I mean, clearly, I am very sure that we are really transforming our minds as the program intends to do. We've had so many exposures, and it is really good that we are having this conversation. Doc, you were talking, but there's one thing that also bothers my mind. After going through all these difficulties that surround our energy sector, and clearly the fact that individuals are not truthful, and I was very happy you made mention of Ghana's governance system when it comes to the issue of transition. People think that instead of us ensuring that governance is a continuum, we rather want to come and then create a different perspective and deliberately create the impression that our predecessor did not do much, or whatever was done before I came in, it was terribly wrong. Lack of growth in the sector, structural problems, financial problems, managerial problems. I believe all this existed when you were the Prime Minister. Today, the average Ghanaian only wants solutions. We are so tired with the complaints and all that. We voted individuals in, we are paying them with our taxes to do a basic solve our problem. During your time as a minister, you exhibited it clearly that you solved our problem. What did you do during your time to give us that solution? And what would you have done if you were in charge now to give us the solution again?
Well, let me say this. We were able to achieve the successes we chopped. One, because of the support of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. I had unfettered access to him. And I will say he was the #1 power minister. I was #2. To the extent that he instructed me to keep my phone on even when I was asleep. So my phone was always by my pillow. He could call me at 2 a.m. because somebody somewhere had also called him. So he was the number one power minister. I was his number two. I had all the support. And for any minister of energy or power in this country, you will need the support of the head of state and personal commitment of the head of state. Without that, you are going to have challenge. Because you see, there is always this perpetual restraint from the Ministry of Finance. Finance, rightly so, from their perspective, see energy as a drain. So Tekpe used to tell me, Kwabena, my books balance and I'm comfortable until you come.
Interesting. And I think it's also because of what you said earlier, that we never saw the energy sector as an economic, sector, but we're rather seeing
Precisely.
it as a social,
And so you are going to need the president to intervene to subdue some of the powers of the Minister of Finance. Remember, we passed a law that, in my personal opinion, needs serious revision, the Public Financial Management Act. Virtually, you cannot do anything without the Minister of Finance approval. That law has made the Minister of Finance like a minister extraordinary who will need to review that. So depending on the mindset of the Minister of Finance, if it's a fiscal conservative Minister of Energy, you are in trouble. And so when you have a president who is progressive, who is Keynesian in economic approach, then, and I had that in President Mahama. So that was the first one. Secondly, we were extremely focused. We brought in Cal Power, we brought in Ameri, we brought in LA Power, we brought in AXA. We were extremely focused. And we were also very constructive, even in our contracting. There were those that were emergency power, like AXA, Ameri. They were short-term. Then there was the TEMA, Power Company Limited, the Trafigura one. Yeah. Those were, Trafigura was 4 years, AXA was 5 years, Ameri was a boot, 5-year boot. Then Power was medium term, 10 years. LA Power was a regular IPP. So it was structured. Wow. It was structured. And the good thing is that access contract lapsed after the 5 years. Well, it's ironic that the MPP government haven't criticized so much for excess capacity, renew that. If you have excess capacity and the contract has lapsed,
why renew it?
Why renew it? They have not only renewed it, but signed another contract for AXA to locate a new plant in Kumasi. And so sometimes we can be victims of our own propaganda. The Ameri was special. Parts of the brouhaha around Ameri, I will attribute 60% to ignorance and the fear of the unknown. And then the rest was pure mischief. Why do I say this? Until Ameri, we had never operated a built own, operate and transfer. TICO has been in Ghana. TICO was commissioned in 2000. We are in the 24th year. It's never become ours.
So it is still being operated by
the IPP.
Owned by the IPP.
Precisely. So known as Sogli Phase 1 was done under President Kufuor. President Kufuor left office in 2008. It's still running. It's not become ours. We have same power, we have others. But in America, we decided to do a different structure. We decided that rather than, yes, we didn't have the money, we needed the power. Rather than do a regular IPP that will stay for 25 years and we pay for it several times over, let's do a build, own, operate, and transfer. If we're going to pay 4 cents for a regular IPP, let's pay 4.5. Over 5 years, we will have gone through the capital recovery phase, and then it becomes. And one of the arguments I put up, the memo to Parliament, was that Ameri was modular. It came in modules of 25 megawatts each, and there are 10 of them, 250. And that if there was the need in future, we could move it to other parts of the country to resolve problems there.
Just like it's happening.
Just like it's happening.
Being transferred now to Kumasi.
Precisely. Again, it was the NDC government, 2015. In fact, the plan started late 2014, 2015. We decided that in the national interest and in the interest of technical efficiency, there must be generation in the central corridor. It was the NDC led by President Mahama and under my stewardship. Together with GRICO was the implementing agency. We said there should be generation in the central corridor. First of all, there is the security risk of concentrating all your generating assets in one location. But there's also the technical reason. The longer your transmission lines, the more you lose power in transmission losses. So if we embed generation in heavily populated consumer areas, we reduce transmission losses. And therefore, it improves the economy. I was then the Minister of Power. President Mahama was the president, and Engineer Muna was then the chief executive of GRICO. This was when we did that. And I'm glad if you listen to the minister's speech, even though I wasn't invited to the Ameri recommissioning. If you listen to the minister's speech, the minister alluded to the 2014-2015 that this had been government policy. The Minister for Energy alluded to that. So that was, we foresaw the need to have this modular plan. However, some of our CSOs, as nationalistic as they are, can also get it so seriously wrong. If you go out, if you put information out there that, look, if we were buying this, it would we could have gotten it for 290 million. Yeah. Probably add the balance of plan, could have gotten it for 300 or almost 400, and we are paying 510. Who goes into a mortgage for a $80,000 property, and at the end of the mortgage period pays $80,000? Doesn't happen. Look, the taxi driver, if he goes for a car, work and pay, at the end of the period, when the car becomes his, he would have paid far more than the store price if he had the money to pay. This is normal, except that in the charged political environment of Ghana, people had decided to make the normal the abnormal. And therefore, we have turned logic upside down for very pure partisan interest. And I look back and I ask myself, we have done it better. We have communicated better. my team and myself and Honorable Jinapor was a very able deputy. We were probably too focused on solving the problem. And so at the communication end, we probably could have done a better job. But our focus was solving the problem. Today, Ameri has been relocated to Kumasi and rechristened Kumasi 1 thermal power plant. And we paid nothing for it because we owned it. And therefore, the tariff that PUSC will face for Ameri will be a lower tariff. Exactly. Indeed, PwC did some work when we were being accused. President Mahama commissioned PwC to look at the whole transaction. And PwC came out that levelized over the life of the plant was the cheapest plant in Ghana. Right? The report, but people were not prepared to listen. The political atmosphere has been so negatively charged that anything positive wasn't worth hearing. So I am happy that President Mahama's vision on Ameri has been fulfilled, even though the attribution, and that is my only problem, the initial VRA ministry communication did not let the average Ghanaian know that that was the Ameri plant. Because it was rechristened Kumasi 1 thermal plant, which is consistent with VRA's naming. So you go to thermal, we have thermal 1, thermal power plant, we have thermal 2, thermal 3, we have them. So if it is consistent, I don't have a problem with that personally. But my problem is that at least Ghanaians ought, because of the brouhaha over Ameri, Ghanaians ought to have been told. It should have been far more explicit that this is the Ameri plant and not behave as if it was a new plant. It's just being relocated. And we had foreseen that, and that was why we brought modular plants.
That's right. This is really interesting. The second leg of the question, or the other leg of the question is, you've gone through the fantastic proposals and the things you did. You gave us results. We are where we are now. What needs to be done for Ghanaians to have?
First of all, mindset. Mindset. Mindset on behalf of Ghanaians, mindset on behalf of government, mindset on the utilities themselves. Waste is waste. If you are losing 30%, look at the tomato seller who goes to pick tomatoes from Akomadan to Asafo Market. If you lose 30% of that tomatoes on the way from Akomadan to Asafo, you are in a loss-making business. How much can you add to the price to make up for the 30% you have lost? And then your finance costs. So then we will have to tackle that headlong. And this is where I support the managing director of ECG. And it will be surprising to people in terms of collection. There must be no free electricity for anybody. In fact, when I was Minister of Power, I put the Ministry of Power on prepaid. Yes.
And I think that should be done to all the ministries.
Then the question of hospitals and schools. Yeah. Hospitals. And I had proposed them, and if I had stayed in office for another year, I would have done it. Let's identify the critical units in a hospital. The operating theaters, the wards, the laboratories. Very few of them. And put those on post-paid meters. and make sure there's a budget line, either with the Ministry of Finance or with the teaching hospitals in their IGF appropriation. There's a budget line to pay for that. Put the rest of the hospital on prepaid. The administration block, the doctors and nurses bungalows, their cafeteria, canteens, put all of them on prepaid. It will reduce the indebtedness of the hospital. Schools, the universities, the laboratories, because I come from academia, the laboratories are critical. Somebody's 6 months' work. So identify the laboratory, put them on postpaid. Put the rest of the university on prepaid. Especially the central administration, put them on prepaid. They will never run out of power. They will buy. The Vice Chancellor's office, put it on prepaid. Exempt, if you want to be generous, the teaching, the lecture halls, but I won't even exempt them. Basically, we are all running business units. Your business is health business. My business is to supply electricity. Why must I subsidize you? That is the commercial mentality I want to see. If the government of Ghana wants a subsidy, it should be budgeted for and it should be costed. And there should be a line item in the national budget. For example, pro-war policy, the lifeline. I will expect ECG to calculate with PURC and the Energy Commission how much it costs the company or the state to operate the lifeline. If it costs us 200 million cedis a year for people to be on the lifeline, the government of Ghana should be billed with the 200 million. And it should appear in the budget as a line item. Currently, government is paying some monies on behalf of ECG, but it's so haphazard. When there's a crisis, they go and find money, buy this fuel. Exactly. We are not planning. We are managerially. So and ECG itself, they have to drive down cost of operation. Look, there is a classic story in Kumasi, ECG. It's typical ECG mentality. They have 2 warehouses in Kumasi sitting on the same plot. One for Ashanti Region A, one for Ashanti Region B. So I go there, and each warehouse also has a filling station attached to it. So I go there and I ask, can one of the warehouses carry out the business of Ashanti Region A and B? They say, oh, it can, and there will still be capacity. So then why put up 2 on the same plot? With 2 filling stations, how many vehicles do you operate? You have 2 filling stations. It is the procurement-led mentality that ECG and a number of state enterprises have to get rid of and become business focused. You need a filling station. What is the business case? What stops you from having a contract with 2, 3 fuel suppliers, and then you pick products from your fuel from there? So we will have to turn ECG and NETCO. They have to be far more business oriented. If there is the need to subsidize power for any segment of society, it should be properly costed and provided for in the national budget. So that is what we need to do going forward. Then the management of ECG, managers should be allowed to manage. We consciously, as a people, registered ECG as a limited liability company. Why do we want to operate it like a board authority or some parastatal? This is a limited liability company. It means it must have a commercial focus. Not until we get ECG and NETCO right, especially ECG, the power sector will be challenged in terms of revenue. The cash waterfall, we introduced the cash waterfall mechanism. But the cash waterfall, at best, only if more efficiently allocates what has been collected. If what has been collected is less than cost, the efficiency of allocation does not make up for the deficit. All it means is that ECG, all your collections, put it in one basket. And then in that basket, let's determine the priority. Priority 1, fuel. Priority 2, IPPs. Priority 3, grid co, VRA, ECG. Unlike the situation where ECG decides that I will pay you, I won't pay you, but I'll take this for myself first. That is all. Sure. It's efficiency of allocation. But it does not address the structural fundamental problem of inadequate collection.
Unfortunately, we are running, or we have run out of time. This conversation is an interesting one. But just in a minute, I will need to find out from, because that has been a debate also out there. We have the thermal, we have the hydro. What makes it difficult for us to introduce other sources? Atomic, wind, and all that.
Atomic, nuclear energy, I'm for it. We've had some small nuclear facility in this country over 40 years, so we have proven that we can handle that. It provides good base load. You can have nuclear power probably for 3 cents per kilowatt. It's a 10-year project. 10 years. And we are looking at 2 to 5 billion at the minimum, but more like 10, 15 billion. So it's capital intensive. So we must have that. And I think we committed our section of 2020 manifesto to that. Right. I've just seen that the minister has signed a memorandum of understanding. If it's not for electoral purposes, then fine. So we must go that way. Wind, the issue about wind is variability. Wind, solar. Indeed, we must promote solar, but initially off-grid solar. And with the net metering coming in, now that the net metering regulations have been passed, individuals should be able to populate their houses with solar panels and sell electricity to the grid when they don't use it. And that's what net metering will allow us to do. We must do it. But you cannot use that as base load. It is always supplementary. You need a stable base load, especially for industry. And with our natural resource endowment, we will have to take nuclear serious. We can also do run of the river, the small dams, mini dams, 50 megawatts, 80 megawatts on our rivers and Cobra, Pra, Duale. But we're also so busily undermining the integrity of the rivers that, assuming you had turbines on Ancobra, the chemicals would seriously affect the lifespan of the turbines. There are those things. Yeah. But we have to.
We have to renew. I agree. We have to. Pardon me, I said this was going to be the last one, but this is the very last one. We are in an election year. December 7th, we are going to the polls. Among other things, this platform is supposed to transform the minds of our electorate. In a word or two, what advice do you have for electorate as they prepare their mind to make?
Well, President Kufuor once said she was sitting him. But we should not just, we should demand from our political parties manifestos that are structured, manifestos that address the real medium to long-term challenges of the country. And we have challenges. Let me give you a quick one. There is this book, Structural Adjustment and Mass Poverty in Ghana. In 1921, 3 commodities accounted for 90% of our foreign exchange: cocoa, timber, gold. They were exported raw. 2023, 3 commodities accounted for nearly 80% of our export earnings: cocoa, gold, crude oil, exported essentially raw.
Oh my God.
So, yeah, so there is a serious, the need for a serious mindset on transformation, on structural realignment, and on industrialization. We can't jump. So let voters look for those things. And let voters look for honesty and integrity in public life. For me, that is critical.
Great, 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 great. Anyway, so this is where time will allow us. As you can see, I wish this conversation will never end, but unfortunately, it needs to end at a point. You and I have learned a lot, and I'm sure that there's a lot of information that has come. What we need is to move away from the propaganda and ensure that the right things are done. I will also add my voice to many Ghanaians and say to the current Minister of Energy, Matthew Opoku, that it is just prudent for us to drop the arrogance and just to help Ghanaians. It is not, that difficult for Ghanaians to request, which they have. Just simply asking for a timetable, even if you are not in the position to solve the problems surrounding the doom. Just give us a time and drop this. That is all I can say. This evening's program is going to be repeated this coming Wednesday on this same platform, TV XYZ, early 11 a.m. And I will entreat you to listen and watch it again so that you can learn from it. On your behalf, on my behalf, all we can say is to tell our Honorable Dr. Kwabena Donko, thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving us this wonderful information. I think it is going to help us to transform our mind. So we meet again next week, Monday. It is goodbye